Life Reflection, Chapter 29, Who I Am Now. So in the previous episode, we talked quite a lot about our birthday events and who I was over time, just like age and time and how I've seen myself over that period of time and what I think about age in general. But for this one, we're going to get a bit more specific on who I am now and really create a timestamp on that, because I feel like it will change over time and it'll be interesting to look back and listen to myself talk and see, how did this person actually think? How did I think back then? And how is it different now? Because there's this one question I remember my cousin's husband asking me, and he was asking me what's changed, because the last time I saw him was about 5 years ago. And he said, yeah, it's been 5 years. What's changed? What have you really learned in these past 5 years? And that really got me thinking, what's the biggest thing that has changed about me in that time period? And I'd say definitely my self-awareness, for sure. I'm way more self-aware. But if we want to talk a bit more of the hard skills and stuff like that, we've improved a lot more for certain skills that I really like. We've gotten slightly stronger for certain things. We're more capable with the Japanese language because we went to language school, and we've created a whole bunch of skills related to video production. Those were not skills I knew how to do at all 5 years ago. 5 years ago, before 5 years ago, I didn't even have my own camera. So right about 2020, the beginning of it is when I got my own camera and started doing my thing and learning about it and everything. So those were the hard skills that I learned. And I'm glad I could point at some, because I do feel like they're very useful. And I made a fair amount of money with those skills, freelance and voiceover work and being a top teacher on Skillshare. Those are all things that I were not capable of doing at all 5 years ago. But also just the way I'm able to interact with people, that's a big thing as well. Getting to meet people, talking to people, really having a good conversation and being open. I think that's something that I'm better at now compared to back then. You really can change the way someone perceives you through how you approach talking to them. Your voice, your mannerisms, the tone of your voice is very, very important, I'd say. And all of that is a practice thing. Even if it is subconscious, it still is a practice thing. I don't think I've ever actively tried to practice with people, but I've noticed myself changing over time, when I think about it, how I approach talking to someone and my energy levels when I talk to them and all that stuff. It's something I just noticed. It's not something I actively changed. But the more you do it, the more, and if you're truly interested in people and getting to know people and all that stuff, it just sort of becomes that way, because you want that energy to be shown from you, because you want others to also give it off themselves. It's sort of like a reflection type of thing. And I tend to be someone who reflects other people as well. And I think having met more and more people over time that were energetic and gave me that good feeling, I'm yeah, that's the energy I like. I should also try to give off that energy. So those are, some solid things I wanted to list out based on that question that he asked me. And one of the biggest things I'd say that changed in the past 5 years is that, one, I started off this whole thing of making YouTube videos about self-improvement. I was very much into those values and what other people said. It's I didn't have my own identity, I'd say. I was just someone who absorbed a lot of other people's identities, and I guess that made up my identity. But over the past 5 years, I think I've really formed a stronger identity, and I think it'll keep getting stronger over time. But that identity came from throwing away the other identities. So I mentioned this at some point in a previous episode, but we can talk about it way more now, especially the creeds. This is the beginning of the creeds, right? Sometime around, I think 2021, 2022, we had something like a list of values. We called it the 8 creeds back then, and there were certain words that represented the creeds, like love, organization, honor, creation. It's just so many. It was cool. I very much, it had my own twist for sure. And a lot of it was also somewhat my stuff also, but I just feel it was mixed in with other people's stuff. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. So I tossed it away. I just, created a whole new sheet because I keep a lot of this stuff in Google Sheets. But once I created a new one, it was good. It was like a blank slate, and I just waited until it felt right to add to the list. And the first one that I mentioned was from back then. I will remember what others have forgotten, which eventually developed into I will remember everything that makes me who I am. And I had a whole episode dedicated to that one, so I'm not going to talk about it much here. But there are other ones that made their ways to the list, and I wanted to talk about the list in general right now. There's one that we've mentioned as well already. I will strive to live a life worth remembering, a life I'm proud of. That's been one of the more recent ones that has truly resonated with me. It's so simple, but the second I said it out loud to myself, that one day, I can still remember that day. I was just like doing a little small meditation near my couch, and I was just feeling something strong. Like I was thinking about life in general and feeling something strong, and I wanted the words to just come out, and I was looking for them, and it just came out this way. I will strive to live a life worth remembering, a life I'm proud of. And when I said it, I was like, yes, this is it. This is the value I was looking for during that time, like during that session of meditation. It wasn't like a value I was looking for days or months or whatever. I don't look for my values. They sort of just come to me through experiences and through high emotions. And that's how I remember each of them. So like one of them, for instance, these ones are a bit tied to events. This particular one is tied to an event that was kind of shitty. I was driving my mom's car to somewhere because hers is just more fuel efficient. And unfortunately, I parked in a spot that was kind of tight and had like a pillar next to it. And I wasn't used to parking her car or using it. So I accidentally scratched the side, like the door. And, a lot of things rang in my head. I was like, shoot, how am I going to explain this? What am I going to say? Like part of me also thought of making up an excuse and saying like someone did this, but it was me. And I was going to live up to it. I was going to own up to it. And that's exactly what I did. And, I told my mom that I'd try to fix it. So I went out to try to fix it and all that stuff. And eventually it was fixed, but it was mostly thanks to my mom, I'd say. But I still tried my best. And the oath that I created that day was, I will seek to right my wrongs. And there was also another one, I will hold honesty above cowardice. That one has been somewhat absorbed by another oath I created. So sometimes like I create some oaths and I really, really feel them strongly at the moment, but like later on I'm like, yeah, that's kind of an obvious thing, or like it doesn't resonate that much. I don't want to make a massive list. So sometimes I just like combine the oaths that come up. So I will seek to right my wrongs. That one is actually on the list. It's a very, very simple one, right? Like if you did something wrong, just write it. Just like do your best to make up for the wrong that you did. It's a very, very simple one to understand. And the one, I will hold honesty above cowardice. I feel like for me at this point, like that's just, I don't have to think about that. It's like something that's very true to me. Plenty of my friends have told me before that I'm the most honest person they've ever met. In a good way. One of my friends says, she's so nice to me. She said, like some people say that they're just being honest. And honestly, it just seems like for them, it's like an excuse to be rude. But for you, it's like you're honest at the same time. Like you always like try to be respectful about it. And I really appreciated her words about when she said that. And when my other friend said like, I'm the most honest person he's met, and how like, whenever we play Avalon or a board game where we have to lie, people are always so surprised that I'm able to lie so well. But like Avalon is a game. Like it's just, you're supposed to lie for the sake of the game. So it's completely different versus like real life. It's like if you're lying about something and you're hiding stuff from people that, you should be honest about, like that just feels so wrong. So this one, I will hold honesty above cowardice. It got absorbed by, I will see truth and speak truth. So for this one, I know a lot of people are like, they don't like seeing truth, I guess. Some people don't like the phrase like, oh, my truth, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about any of that stuff. That's not what this means. This simply means like, if I see something that is true versus something that is not true, like I will simply see it and speak it. So if someone is saying like, oh, they feel a certain way about something, and like you can tell that that's not necessarily true, then you point out like, the contradictions they make. You point out like certain things that are not in line with what they're saying. So it's almost like spotting other people being like lying or trying to cover their emotions or trying to do something that's dishonest, basically. And that goes for myself. So that's why I will see truth and speak truth is the one that replaced the honesty above cowardice. Because although I do like the ring of honesty above cowardice because it does have a good feel to it. But yeah, there's just like, especially during this time period where I fought with certain friends, like there were just so many lies flying around, so many like made up things, because that's what people do sometimes when they're emotional. They make up things because they want to protect themselves, because they're defensive, or there's just something, and I totally understand that. But like when I see something that happened that is so obviously contradictory to what you're saying, I have to say it. I just have to, because I see it. And when I do say it, like things change. The dialogue starts to change. The conversation starts to change. They start to admit certain things. They start to go deeper into their emotions. And you know, this is for like very close people for me. This isn't like strangers where I'm going to point out their lies or contradictions or whatever. I don't do that, you know? People can say and bullshit however much they want. Like, as long as it's not that important to me, as long as it's not important for us as friends or as like a genuine, true interaction, then it doesn't matter to me. I'm not going to go around pointing out people's lies. I don't care. Like, what I care about are the bonds that I've formed and forged. And like, I've spent years with some of these people, and like, I want to make sure that our communication is always honest and true. And that's what this oath is. It's not about anything else. That's why I feel like sometimes when I say it out loud, there's not enough context. The only person that these words matter to is me, because I have the experience, I have the context, and that's what makes it personal, right? That's what makes this list personal. Otherwise, like, I'd have to explain everything in order for people to understand. Otherwise, they could easily misconstrue what these values are. And I think that's what makes like a really good list, is that it's simple to say, like just a sentence that's very, very simple, but you feel it strongly because it's tied to so many events and emotions in your life. And another one that's really related to the one I just spoke was I will face conflict with an open heart. This one's very, very simple as well, and it's related to so many things in my life, I'd say, but just mostly related to pain. Because I do feel like oftentimes pain can make you think things that aren't true, can make you feel certain ways and point you in directions that are not good for you. And sometimes you just want to like shelter yourself and not really act on the conflict. You know, you just like ignore it, run away from it. But sometimes you just feel what you feel, right? And you got to face that conflict knowing that you feel those feelings. And that's what that oath is. It's just tied to all the interactions I've had with people where, you know, I feel a certain way and I feel pain and sadness from it. But despite it, I'm still going to try to talk about our friendship. Even if one person's not feeling like, I don't know, just arguments, right? Arguments in general and conflicts in general. I don't want to get too specific about it right now regarding the specific people I'm thinking about. I've mentioned some of it already, actually, but it's just like those moments make you really, really feel a lot of pain. And I think the strongest way to move forward is to face it with that pain. Like, even knowing that you have it, like still facing it. That's pretty much it. Yeah, and this one's also related to stuff like that, which is I will see others for who they are and not who they were. So over time, a lot of my friends, a lot of my family members and people in general that I knew and love, they're different now. Despite us having all the memories that are precious to me, the things that were said, the things that were promised, I understand that they're different people now from back then. It doesn't necessarily like relieve them from the promises they made, and I still, you know, point that out, but I understand that life has turned them into different people, and maybe they don't feel like as much love for me anymore, or as much like they don't remember everything from back then as well. But that's totally fine. And I think this one's also pretty connected with a lot of things. I feel like a lot of my oaths surround people, like just people that I care about, right? I'll just say a lot of them because I feel like a lot of these are very much related, even though they are specific to certain things. Like for instance, I will keep my promises for those I love. In general, I try to keep all my promises, but especially for the people that I love. Like for instance, the friend who sent me voicemails back then when I moved in 8th grade, and she was helping me with a time that was so dark in my life, and I just promised her that we'll be friends forever, and that is what I will do. I would try my absolute best to keep that promise for her. And same goes with a lot of other people, but that's sort of my anchor. That's like each of these odes has like an anchor, a memory, a thing that allows me to feel the emotion that I felt when I first created it. And there's another one, which is, I will protect the hearts of those I love. It's a very, very simple one that came about from actually a very simple memory, honestly. It was just one of my friends, we had a meetup and she ended up canceling it last minute. And I was already, sort of there. It was because she basically just had a hectic week and she lost track of time and dates and got things mixed up and everything like that. But, I felt bad. I really did. But, I told her it wasn't an issue, like, don't worry about it and all that stuff. Because for me, it's more important that she doesn't feel bad. And I don't want to make her feel bad, even though I feel bad, because I care about her, because she's a good friend of mine and she's just had like a hard week and everything like that. And despite like the fact that I went out and drove out very far and didn't need to, and was definitely feeling bad about it and annoyed, I did not show it at all. And I think like this one's a little bit like contradictory with I will see truth and speak truth, but it's not necessarily like full-on contradictory. I think it was okay, and I do care about her way more than like one meeting, right? And I do care that she feels okay, and it is fine when I say like, oh, it's fine, don't worry about it. Like, it's not as if I'm lying about that. What I see as true is that she's having a hard time, and I don't want to cause more of that. So I think it's important to have a balance of making sure like knowing the right timing and right situation for what to say sometimes. And it's not always about like pointing out or like relieving yourself of stress or bad feelings because you want to stick to this oath of speaking the truth. It's not about that. It's about the relationship. It's about the connection and what's best for it and how do you interact with that, right? Like for me, I'm totally fine if I don't point out that I was annoyed and that I felt like I drove out for nothing, right? I'm totally fine with that because it doesn't affect our relationship that much, our friendship that much. But when it comes to like a big discussion about, like just big things in the friendship in general and things that happen and all that stuff, like it needs to be clear what actually happened and what the feelings were around those events and stuff like that. So it's like it depends on the situation. And it's really about the spirit of keeping to the spirit of the oath rather than actually like doing exactly what it says, if that makes sense, which again really, really ties to like context, right? But let's get back to like maybe the bigger ones. One of them is I will never abandon others. I will never abandon others. That is something I've already stated before based on first few episodes. I think the big ones I've already stated before at some point, but this one is tied into I will still love those who no longer love me because I think we've explained this one quite enough. It's just we care about people deeply and sometimes they forget about that. Like they forget over time. That's what time does to a lot of people. But regardless, despite it, I will still continue to care about them and love them because I will remember what others have forgotten. All of these things are tied together. It's very similar to I will accept that others will act on their desires and not mine. There's one where I say I will act on my desires despite fear, hesitation, or doubt. That one was a very good one in the beginning. I remember saying it to myself a lot whenever I felt scared of doing something or like hesitated to do something I wanted to do. I'm just like calling a friend or like trying to make a hangout happen that hasn't happened in a long time. Like maybe I dreamed about a friend from high school and then I reached out to them and we actually caught up. So that was cool. And yeah, I would just say that to myself all the time. Like I will act on my desires despite fear, hesitation, or doubt. And I would just try. I think that's one of my favorite oaths because it really was an oath that helped me get over some fears and just moments where I really did hesitate. But that also led to the other one that I said earlier, which is I will accept that others will act on their desires and not mine. So just one where I feel like oftentimes I did things and asked for things, and other people didn't want to. Their desires weren't in line with mine. Like they didn't want to hang out. Like they didn't respond or stuff like that, basically. And that's totally fine. I mentioned that in my previous episode with my birthday. It's like some people don't respond. It's not their priority. They're busy. There's so many reasons, right? And then I would choose adventure over comfort. This one highly tied to Japan. It's just doing things that I feel are really good for my life and like not sticking with what's comfortable and just really trying to get out there, basically. Like I created this oath when I was in Japan, basically, because it just felt right, like to be there and tell myself, yes, I'm choosing adventure over comfort. And I still had to choose adventure over comfort there because sometimes you can just stay in the place you're living in and not go out and stuff like that. Especially in the first share house, it's kind of easy to do that. So I would tell myself that whenever I was like, okay, we got to make something happen. We got to ask friends to go out, all that stuff. And then the final one, I will rise no matter how many times I fall. This one's also one of the first ones I created. I kind of just have like memories of myself being in the shower, crying sometimes. Also just being disappointed in the progress I've made sometimes and how little it's been and how much I wanted to do. I didn't cry about that, but I cried about like more of the personal stuff related to like my father or close friends where we had conflicts. Like it just really felt like I was down and feeling just so upset and sad. But that even happened recently after coming back from Japan. Like how my life in Japan was, in my opinion, was just so much better and there was so much to it. And being back here made me feel so slow, so drained the first 2 to 3 months. But I got back up. And I achieved the most productive period in my life so far, I'd say, in the past 2 months. Like, I don't think I've ever been this consistent with so many things at once in my life. A lot of it has to do with the zero entertainment thing. But I got up from a really big fall, for sure. And I flew up, basically. I rocketed up because I felt like I needed to. So that oath was something that helped me. It was like, look, we're down right now, but, we gotta try again. And whenever we make a mistake or whenever we have a bad day, we just tell myself, I will rise no matter how many times I fall. And sometimes it's like the opposite way, like no matter how many times I fall, I will rise. It's like saying it in those more emotional moments where I do feel down and stuff. It helps a lot. And just having, and for that one, like there were so many anchors, but it's a good, the most recent anchor was the whole like coming back from Japan and recovering from it and achieving good results. But yeah, those are my creeds. Those are my oaths in my creed. And that's kind of who I am now. Like those words describe who I am and how I try my best to live. And overall, like I'm not a very serious, like, I don't know. I'm a serious person in regards to like, I want to live a really good life and I care about a lot of people and I take things seriously, but I'm not serious in the sense that I'm like stern all the time. I like having fun and I like just enjoying life and living it with lightness and levity and just being silly. I don't really have an oath for that. I don't think I really need one. But that's everything in regards to like who I am as a person, my values, how I see things. I think in the next one we'll talk more about our goals, but to close things off, in general, like I feel like for life, like the way I see life is like we all have our own goals. We all have things that we want to do, different things that we value. And I feel like a lot of my oaths sort of reflect that, like learning about other people's desires, learning how to best communicate and feel about conflicts whenever we communicate, learning to show care when someone else makes a mistake, like loving others, how to approach loving others that don't reciprocate, how to conduct myself when it comes to my own life and my interactions with others as well. I think for the most part, I've never really thought of myself as anything that other people have labeled, I suppose. Let me try to say that better. So I feel like out there in the world, people like creating identities and labels for others. Like, for instance, like your political party, are you religious? What do you believe in? Like, you're a dancer, or you're this or that. Like, just your occupation, right? I mean, like, if you do that occupation, of course you are like an engineer or a doctor or whatever. But I feel like people attribute so much to just those already created labeled things, and that's fine. It's an easy way to indicate like what someone does or like what someone believes. But I personally never really liked that. Like, I don't know if I feel right calling myself like just because I'm a Skillshare teacher doesn't. I don't like calling myself a Skillshare teacher. You can, I guess, creative entrepreneur, YouTuber, content creator, digital creator, voiceover freelancer, soon to be audiobook author and writer, book writer, musician. I'm almost going to release my first album pretty soon. Course creator, online course creator, Asian dude, Asian American, whatever it is. I don't feel like that label alone describes me at all. Like, I don't feel any connection or affiliation with any of it. Like, I'm kind of just me, I guess. In a way, I can be all of those things also. But the way I sort of see myself in that way, of how like I don't really see myself as just one thing. And I don't want others to see me as one thing. And I don't want others to be like, oh yeah, you believe in this, so you're this. Or you call yourself this, so you must believe in all of these things. I hate that. I think we should all have a conversation, really get to know each other, really talk about like what matters to us and who we are to each other. That's the way I like to see other people. I like to imagine that everyone else is like that. Is like they have their own lives, their whole lives of experience and thoughts and beliefs and things they've done. And that's why, like, when someone says that they're something, I don't want to assume anything based on it. I want to try to get to know them properly. But that's basically it for this one. That's the way I see things, the way I am as of this moment. I will say these days I've been kind of really absorbed in doing my thing, and I haven't thought too much about others recently. Because after my adventure in Japan, I've just been really looking inward and looking at the things that I want to accomplish and do. And I feel like I really need to focus up and get it done, and not really. I spent a lot of time in my 20s just giving so much of myself to others, I'd say. Like, loving so much, caring so much, trying to create memories. And it was great. It was fun. It was amazing. And I feel like I've created a lot of good friends and close friends that I'll have for the rest of my life. But at least for this next few months or time period, maybe a year, I don't know. We'll see. But I just gotta focus in on myself. And it's nothing bad. It's like, I still see friends here and there, and I enjoy catching up with them. But there's just no, I don't know. It's a slightly different feeling, slightly different atmosphere. It's like, I don't think that much about like trying to get to know them more or further our relationship, or when I say further our friendship, it's like getting to know their stories more, all that stuff, like trying to figure out the best questions to ask to really form bonds and connections and all that stuff. I used to think about that stuff a lot, but these days it's just like we just talk. And maybe I'll get back into it later in the future, but for now I'm happy with everything that's happened so far. Like, I feel like I'm quite satisfied with my social life and with the adventures I've had. First, we got to get some stuff done. But I mean, I still want to have more adventures. Don't get me wrong. I just think there are steps I need to take on my own first. And I think I always come back to that. But yeah, let's talk about that in the next one.